So it's now 3 past. I'm just going to make a start. If you're new, please do put your name and your local authority in the chat. It's great to see how many people we've got on the call today. So far, we've got 60. So great to see so many new faces on here. So my name is Talia Berryman. I'm the Campaigns Officer and COP26 Lead at UK100, and I'm going to be chairing our webinar today, which is being co-hosted with CDP. Just a little bit of housekeeping before we start. I know we're all familiar with Zoom in the age of COVID, but just a couple of things. So any comments you have, if you want to respond to what any of our speakers have said, please use the chat box. And then if you find at the bottom of your screen, there's a separate Q&A function. If you've got any questions, please put them in here. If you'd like to name any specific panelists, please do feel free to do this so I can know who to steer your question towards. And you can also upvote and comment on other people's questions, just so we don't have a million of the same questions being asked. The event is being recorded and will be available on our website afterwards. It will be on the same link that you used to register for the event, which is uk100.org/events. We will also circulate the slides afterwards, as we found that's always helpful in the past. So do keep an eye out for an email from me either tomorrow or Monday with all the links, and do feel free to share this with your colleagues. If you need to contact me, please feel free to get in touch via membership@uk100.org, or my email address is talia.berryman@uk100.org. So just to go through our speakers for today, we've got a fantastic lineup, and I'm really grateful to all of the speakers for giving up their time to speak with us today. So I'm going to start off and speak a little bit about UK100 and our net zero pledge. Then we've got Laura Parry and Ravina Singh from CDP, who are co-hosting this webinar and are going to be speaking about the Race to Zero COP26 campaign, CDP reporting and science-based targets. And then we're hearing from 3 of UK100's members, Tim Rippon from Newcastle City Council, Rosalind Farrow from Durham County Council, and Paul Elliott from Plymouth City Council, who are going to be talking more about their experience with CDP reporting and also being a member of UK100. And then we're going to have almost half an hour for questions and answers. So do stay until the end. And please just bear in mind, you can post your questions throughout the session, but we will leave them until the end to answer them. So a little bit about UK100. I know we've got lots of our members here today, but also some new faces. So UK100 is the only network for highly ambitious UK locally elected leaders committed to cleaner, more powerful communities. We're a cross-party network, and now we have over 100 members who are committed to 100% clean energy by 2050. At the end of last year, we actually decided to create a new pledge, which we're calling the Net Zero Local Leadership Pledge. And this is because many of our members are already kind of going further and faster than the original commitment that they made. So we decided to create this net zero commitment, and we had lots of our members consulted in this process. And now we have over 50 members who have signed this new pledge, and more joining every day. We're actually announcing tomorrow that we've now got 57 members. We've got 5 more signed up, which is absolutely fantastic. And this Net Zero Local Leadership Club is advocating to national government for better powers, funding and collaboration to enable the local delivery of net zero. So why join UK100? Well, there are a myriad of benefits. We enable knowledge sharing between members, such as this webinar today, but we also host roundtables and workshops throughout the year, whether this is kind of issue specific, such as on transport, heating, buildings, energy, finance, or if it's on a specific topic like this one today about CDP reporting. We also connect you with world-leading business and industry, and we work with some of the really major names such as Siemens, National Grid, to help you figure out the solutions you need to reduce emissions in your local area and the ones that are tailored to you, because obviously we know that there's no one-size-fits-all solution when it comes to net zero. We also help you to build public consent and support with communications research and insight, because we know it's so crucial to have your residents on board when you're partaking in ambitious net zero commitments. We actually launched a very interesting report recently, which is our Powership report, which is the most comprehensive examination of the powers that local authorities have and need in order to tackle climate change in the UK. I know we're going to be posting some links in the chat throughout the webinar, so please do keep an eye on those and have a look at our research on our website. We also did some research recently on rural attitudes to net zero, which is often, a topic that isn't looked into too much and is kind of left out of the national picture. So if you are a rural local authority, please do check out that on our website that we did with climate outreach. We also facilitate dialogue with national politicians and senior officials across Whitehall, whether this be at roundtables and workshops. And we also have a summit that is taking place in July. I'll speak more about that in a second. And we also amplify the voice of local leaders via collective advocacy to national government. I think this is actually one of the most important things that we do, bringing together the voices of local leaders from all across the country and taking that voice to national government to, as I mentioned before, enable more powers, funding, and collaboration to accelerate the local delivery of net zero. So I've just taken a couple of lines out of our net zero local leadership pledge. You can find the whole pledge at our website via this link on the slide. So we will do everything within our power and influence to rapidly reduce our greenhouse gas emissions. We will work with our residents and businesses to bring our wider communities' emissions in line with net zero as soon as possible. And it's all about continuing to lead the UK's response to net zero, going ahead of the government goal and tackling the first steps with urgency. So what are the requirements of joining UK100 and signing the net zero pledge? So firstly, it depends on your tier of local government. Obviously, there are different powers and responsibilities dependent on tier. So you can find these dates on the page. We also require mandatory annual reporting of emissions from 2022. So that's why, excuse me, that's why we've got this call today with CDP. Which is one way that you can report your emissions. We also wanted to include avoiding the use of offsets, and where offsets are used, they should be as local as possible. So really reducing your emissions at source. A couple of frequently asked questions. There's no membership fee to join UK100. If your local authority does want to sign up, you need to get the leader of the council to sign up on behalf of the council. But obviously, I think we've mostly got officers and portfolio holders on the call today. Please do put in a recommendation to your leader to sign up. We have activities for leaders, cabinet members and officers across the year. So please do join in our activities where you can. We're open to all tiers of local government, kind of from district council and above, and our membership is cross-party. So we do have a range of different local authorities joining. Here is the list of our current members of the Net Zero Local Leadership Club. When we first made this slide, we had 41 members, so the writing might be a bit small because we have added a lot recently. So now we've got 57 local authorities representing over a third of the UK population. I also just quickly wanted to mention our conference, which is taking place on the 13th of July. We've got a couple of elements of the conference for different people to attend. So we've got the Leaders Summit, which is at 10:30 until 12. If you are a member, please do encourage your leader to attend. Then we've got the conference in the afternoon, which is open to everyone. The link will be in the chat to register your interest if you would like to attend, and we'll be able to send you the sign up link as soon as it's open next week. We've also got some international networking sessions, so connecting you to our kind of counterparts across the world, and this is being hosted with C40, so connecting you to, for example, partners in Santiago or Paris or Hong Kong, so that should be really exciting as well. And as I said, the link to register interest is in the chat, and if you need any more information, please email events@uk100.org. So yes, do join us and our growing membership. We'd really love to welcome you and have you on board. So that's everything from me. So thank you so much for listening. And I will pass on to our first speaker for today, which is Laura Parry at CDP, to talk us a little bit about the city's race to zero. So Laura, if you wouldn't mind.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Talia. And I'm hoping that you can all see my screen now. Do shout if you can't. So firstly, thank you so much for having me here today. As Talia mentioned, my name's Laura Parry and I'm a Senior Manager of Partnerships and Fundraising for CDP. Just try and make this so you can actually see it. I'm Senior Manager for Partnerships and Fundraising at CDP within our City, States and Regions team. Also joined here today by my colleague Ravina Singh, who will be touching base on all of the ins and outs of reporting. But what I'm here to talk to you about today is a campaign called Cities Race to Zero. So Cities Race to Zero is the official track through which cities or local authorities of any level can join the UNFCCC's international campaign Race to Zero. And really the broad aim of this campaign globally is to get non-state actors of any type, so this includes businesses, investors, universities, cities, local authorities, states and regions, to commit to net zero by 2050. And there are a couple of kind of key commitments within that to make sure that everybody gets to that point. But really it's to rally together all of these really important actors who have such a huge impact in order to make sure that we're making progress in terms of emissions reduction in line with the Paris Agreement. I know that this will be of interest to you guys as you're joining this call, and as we've just heard from Talia, UK100's members are extremely ambitious, and we've got such a great number who are already making that net zero commitment. So hopefully this will be of interest and in line with the level of ambition you guys are already showing, which is fantastic. So to give you an idea of who's already in the race, there's a huge number of these non-state actors already taking part, including 726 cities and local authorities. And I'm really happy to say I've had to update this slide today following an additional over a dozen cities and local authorities who have signed up just in the last week. So this is really a global campaign gaining traction across the world. And as you can see, the group of actors already in the race represents over 7% of global CO2 emissions and over 500 million people, which is amazing. So why do local authorities need to act? We know that cities and local authorities have a huge potential to both contribute towards climate change and also to tackle it. So we know that cities and urban areas are home to 55% of the global population, generate over 80% of global GDP, and also that there are huge related issues within cities such as air quality, where we know that 80% of cities do not meet air quality standards. And I'm talking about this as though it's an urban issue. We know it's not. We know that more and more research is coming out all of the time around the impacts of, for example, solid fuel burning, which impacts rural areas as well. And on top of this, we know that cities and urban areas are responsible for 75% of global energy use and emissions. So there's this huge amount of impact which is encapsulated within local authorities and cities, which we're really hoping to tap into and catalyze into action with this net zero by 2050 pledge. So why would you join this global campaign? Firstly, in order to kind of support cities and local authorities in terms of reaching that net zero by 2050 target, which obviously is, slightly less ambitious than the target that you guys have got of 2045. So fantastic to see that difference there. But we'll be supporting cities and local authorities to actually reach that target. So step one, actually setting the targets. We've got support on hand to do that. Also selecting high impact actions to reduce your emissions, as well as, really being a place of advocacy for cities and local authorities taking this action. One thing I should mention is the partners involved in this campaign. So I'm here representing CDP, but we also have 6 additional partners in the campaign who are really experts in this field and in providing this support to local authorities globally. So the partners being C40, ICLE, Global Covenant of Mayors, UCLG, Worldwide Fund for Nature, or WWF, and the World Resource Institute, WRI. So it's this really big powerhouse of city organizations who are here to support you along the way and advocate for these really ambitious commitments that you're making. So what is actually involved in making this pledge? There are essentially 4 Ps which are being committed to. The first is to pledge to reach net zero by the 2040s, so 2050 at the very latest, in line with limiting global warming to 1.5 degrees C above pre-industrial levels. The second is planning. So this is a really important step in terms of setting an interim target. So I feel very passionately, and evidence shows that cities are much better equipped to reach their net zero targets later on if they have a much shorter term interim target to check progress along the way. And this is the role of science-based targets, which I'll touch base on in a little bit. The third step is to proceed to actually taking action. So we have this huge catalogue of the most impactful emission reduction actions that cities and local authorities can take. And these have been carefully selected to make sure they really are the most impactful ones, and local authorities will be supported in finding the ones most suitable for them. And finally, publishing. So this is what Ravina will be talking about today, but there are a couple of platforms through which cities and local authorities can report their progress annually. And this is a key part of making sure that there's accountability and progress tracking against all of these commitments as time goes on. I slightly skimmed over the first bullet point here, but this is really what pins everything together, is endorsing the pledge. So as well as being a list of concrete actions to take, this campaign is also about really recognizing the global climate emergency and having a shared message among all of these hundreds of actors globally who are sharing the same sentiment. So just really quickly to take you through how to actually join the campaign, it's relatively simple. We've put together a Race to Zero portal through which you can take all of these actions, from pledging to selecting the climate actions you're looking to take. And this is at www.citiesracetozero.org. You simply go to this pledge, click the Join Race to Zero button, and make sure that you've read really clearly the pledge and you're happy with all of the different requirements. Similar to the UK100 commitment, this is a commitment that must be made at city leader level or mayor level, or by somebody who has the delegated authority to act on their behalf. Next step is to select where you'll be reporting your target and your commitments. So we would obviously recommend the CDP Clear Unified Reporting System, but you can also use My Covenant as an alternative, and whichever you use, you'll be supported to report through those systems. Next is to select from the catalogue of these over 50 actions, which we've highlighted as impactful ways to start making progress towards your target. You can also apologies. You can also select, if none of the actions that are listed there, you can also enter your own. So you're not constrained by that list that's existing. If there are, really local impactful actions that are suitable for your local environment, you're very welcome to add those to the list as well. Then you simply sign and submit the city pledge, as I mentioned, a council leader, mayor, or delegated authority. And then you start taking action. So this is really by starting to set your 1.5 degree aligned target, this interim target that we mentioned earlier. And I'm going to dive into what that means a little bit more. So we've heard already about net zero by 2045, net zero by 2050, and about the importance of interim targets as well. I want to talk to you a little bit about science-based targets and what this actually means. So what we've seen is there's a huge diversity of the different types of targets which cities and local authorities are setting all around the world. And it's often very difficult for cities and local authorities to see if the target that they're setting is actually aligned with the level of ambition that's needed to represent a fair share of their global reduction in line with this 1.5 degree scenario. So we hear these very big high level figures that we need to globally be net zero by 2050 and globally halve emissions by 2030. But what that doesn't mean is that that's your trajectory on a local level. So what we're doing with science-based targets and these 1.5 degree aligned targets is making sure that the target you've set is suitable for your local area and represents this fair share of global emission reductions. We've been working really hard with a number of partners through the Science-Based Targets Network to identify different methods that cities can use to set these targets. The one that's most popular in the UK is the Tyndall Centre methodology, which a number of local authorities, such as City of Manchester and Greater Manchester Combined Authority, have used. Along with around 20 others as well. So it's quite a popular method. But there are also a couple of others. So C40's Deadline 2020 method and WWF's One Planet City Challenge method as well. And what we've done to support cities in setting these targets is put together a guide introducing this idea of science-based targets, the key principles of what we actually mean when we're talking about setting science-based targets, and an overview of those three methodologies that I just mentioned to get you started in setting those targets. What we're not saying is that you need to by COP have a science-based target in place. It's best for this year to report the target that you've got, and then we'll be able to reach out to you with the type of support that you need in order to get you over the line to these really, ambitious targets which represent your fair share of emission reduction. As I mentioned, there's a lot of support available. So for any cities or local authorities in ICLEI's membership, ICLEI will be reaching out to support you. From CDP's side, we can help you with any queries you have using this email address, cities@cdp.net. We've also got a guide on our website, an FAQ page, and there'll be additional guidance being added to our website all of the time, as well as webinars too. I'm going to skim past this action planning piece simply to say, have a look on the portal at the actions that you can take. And my colleague Ravina will be running through how to report against the city's Race to Zero requirements. The key one is that we recommend reporting in 2021. From 2022, it will be compulsory. And we've produced a guide to support cities and local authorities in reporting against Race to Zero requirements. But I will leave all of the exciting reporting pieces to Ravina to run you through. So thank you so much for having me here today. If there are any questions, do put them in the Q&A box and I'll answer them in the Q&A section later.
Thanks so much, Laura. That's really, really useful. And I think when I first heard of science-based targets, I was incredibly scared and frightened, but you've explained it in a really simple way. So thank you. And also just to say that actually 40 of UK100's members have also signed up to the Race to Zero campaign. So it's not just for cities or mega cities, everyone can join, and we've got districts, counties, combined authorities that have all joined. So now passing on to Ravina to talk us a little bit more about how to report to CDP.
Great, thank you so much. Hopefully you can see that. I'm just going to make that full screen. Perfect. So welcome everyone. My name's Ravina Singh and I'm the UK Cities Senior Engagement Officer at CDP. And today I'm just going to kind of talk through an introduction to CDP as an organisation, our work with UK local authorities, and present an overview of the benefits of reporting. I'll also run through some practical points on getting started and kind of using the platform itself, as well as the timelines. So as Talia has said, please feel free to pop any questions in the Q&A box as we're kind of going along, and we'll kind of go to those right at the end of the webinar. So to start, CDP, formerly known as the Carbon Disclosure Project, is a non-profit organisation that runs the global disclosure system for investors, companies, cities and local authorities, as well as states and regions. And this is to measure and manage your environmental impacts. So over 800 local authorities worldwide reported their environmental data through our platform as of 2020. And this is all about kind of tracking progress, benchmarking your performance and accessing really fantastic insights and analysis. So in the UK specifically, we currently have over 30 local authorities taking that next step and disclosing their climate-related data through our platform. And these local authorities really range from combined authorities, such as Greater Manchester and West Midlands, down to much smaller towns, including Norwich, York and Winchester. We also have both urban and rural local authorities, including South Lakeland and Somerset. So this questionnaire really is for all types of local authorities. And disclosure allows us to kind of track the progress that is being made by local authorities. And this really ensures transparency and accountability and provides an opportunity for collaboration and shared learning. So this year, on the right-hand side, you can see we've had some fantastic progress in the UK, where we've had over 88% of local authorities reporting an emissions inventory. An amazing 91% of local authorities have set an emissions reduction target. And 61% of them have a climate action plan and are reporting over 200 different mitigation actions. So just kind of talking you through the process of reporting. So it's kind of an iterative process that begins with our team and partners asking local authorities for their data on their environmental performance. Local authorities then report their data at stage 2, as you can see. And as you can see for stage 4, we then make all our publicly reported data available on our open data portal completely for free. And that's one of the biggest open sources of self-reported environmental data. And this data is also shared with partners and organisations such as the Global Covenant of Mayors, C40 Cities and ICLEI. And using the data, CDP and our partners complete analysis to produce reports, inform events, and also do advocacy and technical assistance programmes. And it helps us to really understand who is leading on climate action, but also where gaps remain that might need kind of additional support. So decision makers within your local authorities can use this analysis to assess and improve your goal setting and kind of climate action plans, and report annually the following year to track the progress you're being made towards those goals. So some of the benefits of reporting to the unified reporting system. These include reporting to other city networks, which can offer you additional support. So these kind of organisations include the Global Covenant of Mayors, WWF, which I will explain in a little bit. You can also get best practice and knowledge sharing, feedback on your climate plans through school feedback through school feedback calls that we do on a one-to-one basis with you, fostering a sense of transparency with your local communities and the ability to track progress. And we can offer guidance on other areas such as collaborating with the private sector. So CDP, we also score your questionnaire, and we provide feedback on local authority responses to help improve your data quality and accelerate action. And our scoring methodology just provides a robust review of your response, identifying your progress on the journey to becoming a climate leader. And the score provides you with an assessment of how thorough and complete your response is on a scale of disclosure on the left-hand side, all the way up to leadership. And we also provide separate mitigation and adaptation scores to reflect the fact that you might have kind of differing priorities in those different areas. So after submission, you will receive a snapshot report, which contains information on how your local authority compares to regional averages, as well as feedback on how to improve your response and your data, including next steps and areas of opportunity. And this actionable feedback can be used to improve your disclosure and climate planning. And scores are completely private, although we will celebrate those local authorities that receive an A score through our kind of A-list press campaign that we do every year. So in 2020, 4 local authorities received this A score in the UK, and these local authorities are Greater London, Bristol, Bournemouth, Christchurch and Poole, and Newcastle, who we have joined here today, which is fantastic, and they're really leading the way on disclosure and climate action. So on to kind of the other partners and programmes you can get involved in. So you can express your interest in participating in different climate initiatives through our platform. And one of these initiatives is the Global Covenant of Mayors for Climate and Energy, or GCOM for short. And GCOM is the largest global alliance for city climate leadership. And they help cities in achieving their ambition by supporting collaboration and sharing of best practices among peers around the world, and providing technical and financial capacity building and training activities. If you're a GCOM member, you can either report through their own platform, or if you'd like to report to both GCOM and CDP ICLEI, you can do both through our CDP ICLEI unified reporting system. And our questionnaire is fully aligned with the requirements of GCOM's Common Reporting Framework. And we also have a team within CDP that provides ongoing support throughout the year through webinars, GCOM-specific guidance, and direct support for you. And another initiative you can express your interest in joining through our reporting system is WWF's One Planet City Challenge, or OPCC for short. And in case you're not familiar with the OPCC, it's a friendly competition celebrating cities that are national and international front runners, demonstrating ambitious climate actions. And through our platform, cities can report their emissions, goals, and targets for the OPCC. And all cities that participate and submit their data through the unified reporting system will receive feedback developed by WWF to give insight on the alignment of cities' climate actions, their plans, targets, with their fair share of the Paris Agreement and its goal to limit global warming to 1.5 degrees. And best performing cities and local authorities will be promoted as national or even international finalists, with the 2 winning cities selected as international winners by an expert jury. And then finally, of course, we've got the Cities Race to Zero, which you can express your interest in joining through our platform. But I'm not going to talk about this anymore because we already had a fantastic overview given by my colleague Laura. And please do put in the chat any questions you have about the Cities Race to Zero, and Laura will have a go at answering them at the end of the webinar. So just to let you know, we work really closely with various organisations to ensure you get the resources and tools that you need, informed by our data and insights. So our partners at the Global Covenant of Mayors, ICLEI and C40 have various resources and tools that can be used to guide your climate action. Of course, we have UK100, and Talia's already given a fantastic overview of the benefits you can get through them. And in the UK as well, there's the Tyndall Centre has their carbon budget tool, which Laura mentioned, which I would really recommend if you haven't set a target yet. And also in the UK, some of you may have already used the Scatter tool, which was developed by Anthesis, which helps with developing a local authority-wide emissions inventory. And the Scatter inventory is aligned with our unified reporting system, and the data can be easily used for your response in the questionnaire. So I just wanted to kind of show you this image, which gives an overview of the topics covered in our questionnaire. And the Cities questionnaire provides a holistic framework for environmental reporting. And I'm not going to go through kind of each section or topic of the questionnaire now, but we do focus on areas you might expect, such as emissions reduction, adaptation, transport, buildings, and essentially our questionnaire allows local authorities to be transparent about the actions they're taking to safeguard the environment and their citizens. So just to kind of give you an insight into how the platform looks, so to start your reporting journey, you'll first need your very own activation link. Some local authorities will have already received their unique activation links through our emails, and you can click on that link and you'll be directed to our webpage. And if you haven't received your activation link, you can contact us at cities@cdp.net, or at the end of the presentation, I'll also give my email address, which you're very welcome to contact. And if you have used our platform before, what you will see after clicking the activation link would be the image shown in Figure A. And you'll just need to use your existing email and password to sign in. And if you're new this year, you will need to register an account as shown in Figure B. And please just check that the details presented matches yours, and you'll need to create a password for your account. And once registered, you will be able to sign into the platform through our website at any point. So after signing in, you'll be able to access your dashboard, which acts as a sort of homepage for our platform. And in your dashboard, you'll be able to access our questionnaire. So once you're in this dashboard, you will need to find the kind of headed section that is called Cities 2021, which you can see at the bottom. And as shown by the image in the slide, you just need to click Get Started. So after clicking Get Started, a separate pop-up window will then appear as shown in the right side image. And the pop-up window will ask you whether you will be the main user or specify whether another contact would be the main user. And for our questionnaire, there's only one main user who has both editing and submission permissions. And extra contributors can be added to also edit the questionnaire together. So it's just one person that can actually submit it. And you can then click Next, where you will be directed to a web page showing the different projects and initiatives you can participate in, as shown in the image on the right-hand side. And it's in this page where you can join and report to initiatives such as the Global Covenant of Mayors, OPCC, and the Cities Race to Zero. And once you're done with selecting the projects you'd like to, click Enter Questionnaire to begin reporting. So after following the previous steps mentioned, you'll be presented with our online questionnaire, which is shown in this slide. And we have both separate guidance, a separate guidance document, a kind of standalone document, but we also have guidance within the questionnaire for every single question, just in case you're not sure about anything. So how do we support you through the disclosure process? Firstly, say there is no minimum reporting requirement for the questionnaire and no specific way you have to do it, purely because it's kind of a global questionnaire and we really want it to be as flexible as possible for you. And the questionnaire also allows you to work offline in both Excel and Word, and you can collaborate with colleagues by sharing it both online and adding multiple contributors to the response. And we provide guidance and resources, including a detailed scoring methodology. Training webinars are always on hand to answer any questions, and we also provide direct support, which is essentially what my job is. So over the coming weeks, we'll be offering a response check service as well. And this provides a completeness and consistency check of your response prior to your final submission. This is a great way, particularly for local authorities reporting the first time. This is a great way to identify any gaps and make improvements. And we'll also be able to follow up feedback calls to provide additional insight and answer any questions you might have. So the response check is available for all local authorities. It's completely free to use. All you have to do is email us with a draft Word export, which you'll kind of see once you go into the questionnaire. You can export it as a Word document, and you've just got to email that across to me by June 25th at the latest. So I just also wanted to mention, we've got a kind of array of webinars that are coming up and have already been done, just as you can see here. We've got webinar on scoring, emissions reporting, risk and adaptation. But you can also go to this page to find recordings of past webinars. So same again, any future webinars, if you're not able to make it, we record all of our webinars, so you can watch it when it's convenient for you. And then finally, I just kind of wanted to go through the timelines. So the disclosure cycle, which we mean kind of the questionnaire is available to start filling in. That's now open at the moment for local authorities to submit their responses. And we're running webinars, as I mentioned, up until the deadline on all sorts of interesting topics. So do go have a look at that sort of events page. And as I mentioned, the response check deadline is June 25th. But the earlier you can get it to me, the better, just so we have plenty of time. But your response really doesn't have to be complete at this point. You just need to have kind of given it a go and really started it. And we're really flexible on how you do this. So please just get in touch if you're interested and we can have a chat about it and I can kind of explain it further. And then finally, the deadline for scored responses, so that final deadline is the 29th of July. Great, well, that's it from me. Thank you so much for listening. And just to reiterate again, if you could just put any questions you've got for me in the Q&A box and we can come to them right at the end of the webinar.
Thanks so much, Ravina, for being so comprehensive and speaking about each detail. Now we're going to pass the mic over to Tim Rippon from Newcastle City Council. Newcastle is one of our members, has signed the Net Zero Pledge, has been A-rated with CDP, and is also part of the City's Race to Zero campaign. So really excited to have Newcastle on the call. Thanks, Tim.
Okay, thank you. And first off, thank you very much to UK100 and CDP for inviting me to speak here. I think I haven't got a slick presentation like we've seen so far, so apologies for that, but what I will have is a nice photo of Newcastle that you can enjoy. So I am from Newcastle City Council and I'm a senior climate change specialist. I've been invited today to talk about a few questions. I'll kind of go through those questions over the next 5 minutes or so and give some responses to them. So the first of those questions was, why had we decided to join UK100? Why had we signed up to the Net Zero Pledge, UK100 Net Zero Pledge? And why had we signed up to the Race to Zero, the UN COP26 Race to Zero campaign? And I think the answer to all three of those was broadly the same. We made a climate emergency declaration as a city in April 2019. And the last year and a half or so, we've been really figuring out the detail of how we go about tackling this pretty comprehensive crisis that we find ourselves facing. And what we've come to the realization of very quickly, but really is cemented in our view over time, is that we need to be starting moving very quickly. We need to have a really hard drive and ambition over the next few years in order to avoid a very steep emission reduction curve over the back end of the decade. But also we've really recognized the need for collaboration and local organizations working together and really pulling together in the same direction. And I think answering the question about why we joined up to these campaigns, I think it's really important that there is advocacy from a grassroots level, that there is a real pressure on national governments, on international organizations, international governments, or international groups to really start ramping up the action and really start moving the agenda forward very quickly. And our local leadership is 100% behind that, that goal. So we felt that these campaigns gave us a real a voice, they resonated with our own ambition, they had real drive and direction, and we wanted to put our weight behind that. Very small in the grand scheme of things, very small weight that we have, but something that, you know, together as a voice, especially as I'm very interested in the comment earlier about, I think 85 or 88% of local authorities in the UK disclosing now, and that body of commitment and drive is great to see, and I think that's a real testament to the severity and the importance that this agenda is being given at this point. So those signing up to those commitments is something that we felt was really necessary to drive that ambition. The second question I was asked was, why did we report to CDP? I should explain that we made our first disclosure actually last year in 2020. And it was something we came quite late to the table. We discussed it probably, I think the disclosure deadline was in August, and we started talking about it in June time. So we really only started getting to work on it in earnest in late June. But we felt there were kind of few reasons, core reasons why we wanted to disclose through CDP. Transparency and accountability was one. We wanted to make sure that our residents and our businesses and organisations in the city and the region knew what we were doing, knew the scale of the challenge, and knew how we were going about tackling that. So that transparency point was really important. The second one was, we felt that it was really helpful to have a standardised approach, a best practice approach that we could adopt and follow and really feed into, and that was quite important for us, because there wasn't that there were other mechanisms, but nothing that we felt was really driving in the direction that CDP was. And I suppose the third bit was about inviting others to help us solve the problem. By disclosing, by being transparent, we opened up the issue to other people and other organisations and people to come forward with ideas and really help us solve that problem. I think our first disclosure last year, we were delighted with the result. Obviously, you know, it was great to be recognised for the effort that went into that disclosure, and thank you indeed to CDP and others who did that. But I think it was really eye-opening for us to see in local terms what it meant. What, you know, we all knew the challenge was going to be big, but by breaking it down, we could start to figure out where our emissions were coming from, how we might start to influence those emissions or reduce them, and really gave us a much more holistic view on the scale of the challenge and how we could go about breaking it down into bite-sized chunks that we could have a good crack at. I think it also spurred us on to really raising our game, because there was a bit of talking the talk, and we needed to really start walking the walk after the emergency declaration. And I think that CDP disclosure got everybody around a table, got them thinking, got them really moving forward their own ambitions. And we found as spin-offs from that the universities, the hospital trusts really started to, that level of engagement at executive level and senior level became embedded and moved forward very quickly. Another question I was asked to comment on was if there were any surprising or key insights that we found from doing the reporting. And reflecting on that a little bit, I think the main thing was just, I was surprised at how much data was out there. It's not just national data. There's a lot of national data, and the scatter tool is really good for helping you to take all that national data and create a local authority analysis of that. But really what we've started to drill into is an enormous amount of local data that's collected and held by different organisations and different departments in places which isn't all pulled together into one source. So by doing the CDP disclosure, it forces you to go and hunt out that data and then start to collect it and analyse it and figure out what it all means. The other key insight, I think, is there's a really useful tool on the CDP website where you can download the previous year's data that's been submitted from other cities. And I'm a little bit nosy by nature, but it kind of, by digging into that detail and doing some downloads of what other people were disclosing in terms of climate vulnerabilities and how they were adapting to climate change and the mitigation measures that they were taking, it got you thinking about what else we could do and where we could do some policy learning and projects and adapt projects from other places and use them in Newcastle. So I would encourage people to go and do a download or two from that database and compare it against what you're submitting. It gives you some ideas, but it hopefully also spurs you on to take some of those ideas on board and take your own practical projects forward. There's only a couple other questions I was asked to respond on, but the penultimate one was, how does being part of these initiatives, how has it supported our local strategy and plans? We put together a net zero action plan in September 2020, and the CDP disclosure was really part of that. It was part of the emissions inventory that we put together for that action plan. And I think having gone through that process and having signed up to the UK100 pledge, we were much clearer on how we could do the climate strategy and how we could build our plan around those ambitions and really around our core emissions inventory. The final question I was asked was about the process of CDP and any key tips. This is my final point, and then I'll hand over to my colleague in Durham. I found it surprisingly straightforward and helpful, the CDP disclosure mechanism. It was really clear cut. It took you through step by step what you needed to do, and I found it really intuitive. But there is an enormous amount of detail in that process, and I really do encourage you to start early in that disclosure and get moving as quickly as possible. So I think starting soon is probably my core lesson and really starting to drill into that detail. But I'll stop at that point and hand over and pick up any Q&A later in the call. But thank you, everyone.
Thanks so much, Tim. Really great to hear your experience and that it's good to start early. I think that's what we'd encourage as well from UK100, which is why we're kind of asking people to report from next year, because we realise not everyone's going to be ready to do it from this year. And great to hear also how that there's so much more data out there than you expect. I think that's really kind of positive to hear. And really kind of, useful for all local authorities. So now I'd like to pass over to Rosalind Farrow from Durham County Council. Would be great to hear about your experience as well, Rosalind. So over to you.
Thank you. Hi, I'm Rosalind. I'm the Carbon and Energy Analyst at Durham County Council. I'm going to talk about our experience with CDP, but in the context of our Climate Emergency Response Plan, or SREP, which is that other acronym that I've got up on the screen there. So to give a little bit of background on Durham, if you've never been, it's quite a large county and fairly rural. We've got 126 councillors to more than 500,000 residents, so it's not small. Those residents live between the North Pennines area of outstanding natural beauty across to the Heritage Coast over in the east. And many of them live in small pit villages in fairly poor quality old housing, spread out, as I say, rurally. So as a council, we got together as a unitary authority in 2009, so we've got 10 years of carbon management already under our belt from a operational point of view, but today, of course, I'm talking about the county as a whole. So I've included this chart here on the right, which shows what our emissions look like. So as a data person, this is the sort of thing that I like to look at. The chart there shows pretty clearly that heat is one of our biggest problems, specifically domestic heat in those pit villages and other houses and estates across the county. So in those 10 years, we have managed to halve our council emissions. But since then, in February 2019, we declared a climate emergency and created an action plan a year later to which included the emissions from the county as well. So that's our SREP, our Climate Emergency Response Plan. It began with a consultation. We talked to people all over the county to try and get everybody involved. It was an awareness exercise as well as actually asking the question. And eventually we published the report in February of 2020. Using that carbon data that I showed you on the previous slide, it gave us our priority areas of transport and heat and electricity, as well as improving the natural environment, sequestration activities, and obviously waste recycling, and supporting our residents with advice and awareness raising. We did set ourselves a carbon budget, got to save, and I've approximated here, but at least 120,000 tonnes of carbon dioxide a year, and then again the next year, and so on until 2050. And this report, as I say, was written very much with the carbon emissions in mind, and it was fairly well received. In fact, it was nationally well received by APSI. But then in 2020, in March 2020, a month after we published that, all sorts of things happened. We began to work from home, and networking became much more of our day-to-day activities, because suddenly everything was online. We were able to do networking such as through UK100 online like this, and it became much more of a day-to-day activity. And that coincided with our first report to the CDP, which, like Newcastle, we did in 2020, but unlike Newcastle, we didn't quite get the full A rating, but I'm not too jealous. So the first thing I would say about that really is that, like Newcastle found, it was relatively straightforward. We used data from Scatter, and I would thoroughly recommend clicking on that link and going through to Scatter yourself if you haven't already done that. Because it's really very straightforward, just to almost copy and paste all of the figures from one to the other to do your disclosure. I think one of the benefits that we found in the last year really of networking, and while writing our SREP, is that the knowledge sharing, which again comes from CDP as well as all the other networks that we're involved with, that even looking at being able to look at projects going on all over the world that might be relevant to us, because really we don't need to all work out the answer individually. We all have roughly the same problem, and we might find roughly the same solutions, although of course not one size fits all, but there are definitely crossovers for all of us. One of the things that I found difficult, so the data side straightforward, the thing that I found difficult was the information on every other aspect of the CDP disclosure. We saw in Ravina's presentation that it is quite big and quite well-rounded. It covers an awful lot of different aspects of climate, as well as just carbon emissions. So when I'm looking for evidence for, say, the public health or the climate hazards, food, waste, water security, things like that, that didn't come from our team. It came from elsewhere in the council, and as quite a big authority, that meant meeting people I'd never even heard of to find the information. But that was one of the great things about it, because it brought us together. It made the climate emergency more of a holistic problem. It became a problem for the entire authority rather than just the low carbon economy team. And that's something that's definitely come across in our next iteration of the SREP, which will be happening next year. So that was the process, and we got our results. We got an A for mitigation, which I think wasn't too surprising, because we have quite a big team who've been doing carbon reduction for over 10 years, and we were able to do that. But our adaptation was less good. Again, not too surprising, because it's less done in our team and more across the whole of the authority and external influences as well. The feedback was great. I thoroughly recommend doing the check halfway through if you can, as well as the waiting for feedback after submitting. Two specific things that I got in the feedback which were surprising and will definitely be useful for this year was that we could submit specific projects. So rather than having a strategy that covers the whole of County Durham, I could have, say, a flood prevention strategy for just Chesley Street and submit that, and I would get some score for that, but also strategies from external organisations. So they don't have to be things that were written by Durham County Council, but if they affect Durham, if we abide by them, then we can report on those as well. So that feedback I found very, very useful. So how has that affected our next iteration of the SREP? We are writing it every 2 years, so we're just starting to write SREP 2 now. These are just provisional. We're right at the beginning of the process and none of this is totally approved yet, but hopefully you can see that our list of priority areas is now quite a lot longer. We've still got the heat, the transport, electricity in there, but we're now including things like connectivity because we know how important an internet connection is to everybody now. Business and skills because we know how the economy needs to be able to have that green element. We need people to be able to install all the heat pumps that we need and every other thing. We've got rural issues in there, perhaps partly due to knowledge from things like the recent UK100 rural report, which highlighted our duty to use our land as we have so much of it for climate activities where more urban counties aren't able to do that. So our SREP 2, we hope, following all of the networking and the CDP reporting and all the sharing that we've done in the last year, will become a more whole document, an actual climate response document rather than more of a carbon emissions reduction document. So in conclusion, I think I'd like to highlight that reporting and sharing good practice is what has helped us to shape our own work. That networking and feedback helps us get better through people identifying things that we maybe wouldn't have noticed ourselves, as well as the recognition that you get from a CDP score if we're lucky enough to be A-rated and be on that A list. There's also the fact that we get a non-biased assessment of what we're doing. We may think that we're great, but having somebody who has no bias in the matter tell us that we are good or bad or where we can improve is very, very useful. So since I am a fan of data, I'll finish with a little graph here though, which shows what we're planning, how we're planning to get to 2050. The fact that we've got the 3 first bars there show what we've done so far, and hopefully that'll get us to 0 by 2050. Thanks very much.
Thanks so much, Rosalind. As a lover of data myself, I really appreciate all the graphs in your presentation, and great to hear a more rural perspective. As Rosalind mentioned, Durham is a key member of our Countryside Climate Network, and we would invite anyone else who is also a rural or countryside authority to get in touch to become a member of that and discuss specific countryside issues, as we know that the countryside and urban issues are very different across the UK. So now I'd like to pass on to our final panellist, Paul Elliott from Plymouth City Council. And Paul, I will just share your slides for you.
Thanks. Cool. So hello everyone. Yeah, my name's Paul. I manage a low carbon team in Plymouth City Council, and my kind of remit, I guess, is to, well, we call the low carbon team. I suppose we should change our name to zero carbon team now, but we were formed some time ago. So to reduce the city's emissions as much as feasibly possible, hopefully to net zero. So if you move on to the next slide, please, Tally. I've just got a black screen, so oh, there we go. We're on. Cool. So why did we sign up to CDP? Why are we part of UK100? So a little bit of context. You know, there'll be themes that you'll all pick up from Tim's and Rosalind's presentation that echo mine really, but effectively our climate emergency, we wanted to do these 3 things. We wanted it to inspire local action. We want citywide conversation off the back of what we were doing, And crucially, we wanted to create a bottom-up pressure on central government to do more and to do it quicker, effectively. So next slide, please, Tony. And then in terms of, the why, I love data, maybe not quite as much as Rosalind, because I can only remember 3 things at once. But this kind of illustrates where we were in 2008, where we need to get to by 2030. The black line is what we've done so far. The red line is what happens if we don't do anything. The green line, and that's the interesting one, is what happens if everything that's currently in policy, national and local, everything that's been thought of, it might not be a policy yet, plays off, happens. And you can see there you've got what we've termed the policy gap of roughly, well, it's about 600,000 tonnes. So a chunk of emissions that we need to reduce that we have absolutely no idea of how to do that. So that's the, fairly blunt, but I guess that's the bottom line. Okay, next slide, please, Tony. So in response to that, much like Newcastle and Durham and many of others on the call, I'm sure, we said, all right, let's declare a climate emergency. We'll put a net zero target date of 2030 because that's what the science is telling us is a good thing to do. And we will commit various things. And one of those is to produce an action plan every year with a list of actions that the council are going to take both on its own estate and citywide to get us to that point. Okay, next slide, please. Cool, thank you. So that's where UK100 come in, really. Ignore the black text on the left. Apologies, Talia, that's more haste and less speed on my part in preparing this. But the 3 key points there on the right-hand side. So, momentum. When something is happening at an individual level, it gets a certain place. When there's a groundswell of opinion and action, a lot more can happen. So, really we wanted to capitalize on the various climate emergencies that were being declared up and down the country. We want to capitalize on the Climate Change Commission's report. We want to capitalize on COP26. We want to be part of that movement. So why did we join UK100? Well, that's the first reason. Secondly, pressure on government. So I said, it's one of the key outcomes we wanted from declaring a climate emergency. And I'm sure the impending global conference on climate change has got something to do with the latest revisions from government that we've seen in terms of their climate targets. But being part of a movement like UK100, is part of that message as well. We need that that voice, that collective voice, does far more than an individual voice. And I think the third point really is around that local and national message. So, if you are challenged by your residents or your portfolio holders or your cabinet or whoever, well, what are we doing about this? It's a really powerful message to say, well, we're part of a collective that want to put pressure on government and do all the things that Talia went through earlier on in her presentation to do things quicker and do things better. So that's the third key message as to why we signed up to this. It also puts your authority on the on the stage, if you like. And this is not, this issue is so important that heads need to be put up above the parapet, I think, and it sends that clear message out. Someone said to me once that applause is the first step to assassination, and they're absolutely right. But this is an issue where you've got to be that bold, I think, and so that was the message that we tried to put out there. Next slide, please, Talia. Okay, and then in terms of CDP, so as Rosalind and Tim said, we were asked some questions around why do we do this? Why are we signing up to it? CDP is an interesting one. So it's by chance, if I'm perfectly honest, in the first respect, which is, I think we've done 3 reports now, so it's pre-climate emergency, I think, and it was just goodwill on my part as an officer. I said, well, this looks like a good thing to do, so we started it. But it's monitoring. You need to monitor in some way how you're progressing through this. You set yourself a target of 2030 or 2045 or whatever it might be. How do you know you're going to get there? Well, CDP is an excellent way of being able to evidence the actions that you're taking. We've all got action plans, etc., that are the detail that kind of underpin our targets. But in terms of that independent, non-biased and I guess the word credible, outside verdict on how you're doing. CDP provides that. It's really useful. And alongside that, now the word I've got there is outrospective, which I checked. I don't actually think it's a real word, so apologies. But the opposite to introspective. This is, and Rosalind touched on this. This is new to all of us. There's no blueprint for this, and so to think that we have all the skills in house to be able to just merrily plod along and get to 2030 is probably unrealistic. I mean, if you do, brilliant, well done you. But my sense is that actually we're not going to do this alone. And having a platform like CDP, which enables benchmarking and sharing of best practice across like for like cities, but then cities that you wouldn't ordinarily get in touch with, perhaps globally in Brazil, wherever, is a really useful tool. I guess in terms of any kind of hints or tips, again, it echoes what both Tim and Rosalind said. It's around the data, and it's around, don't underestimate the amount of data that's needed. So just for transparency's sake, Plymouth got a D in terms of its report. So we're kind of not, I wouldn't say bottom of the class, but we've got a long way to go. And I think a lot of that is around the data that's required. So, and as Rosalind said, it goes across all kind of areas of the council and the city, in terms of gathering that data. So tip number one is, start early, because you'll find that the amount of data you need might not be accessible. But I think off the back of that, don't be scared, because what it does actually, it highlights the gaps, and that's what we really need to get on board with. It's easy for us to go, well, here's, I don't know, our energy consumption data, and these are our emissions for this year. But it's the gaps that are the most important bit. It's the bits that we don't know that we really need to pick up on. And CDP is a good way of doing that in a really, constructively critical way. So those are my two tips. Just last slide then from me, please, Talia, and then I'll stop talking. So it's a bit of a cliche, and I promise I'm not sponsored by UK100 or CDP, but someone said this to me when I first started work, if you're not part of the solution, you're part of the problem. And as I say, it's a bit of a cliche, but in this instance, in this agenda, it's absolutely true. And being part of UK100 and or CDP, there are many tools, but CDP is the best that I've seen. Is one way that you're being part of the solution and therefore solving the problem. So that's my quick ramble done with. Thanks for listening.
Great, thanks so much, Paul. Great to have your perspective. And the grade that you get for reporting doesn't matter, it just matters at the moment. I think that's the most important lesson. So thank you to all of the panelists. We're now going to move on to the Q&A section. We've got lots of questions in the chat, and we've got about 20 minutes left. So please, if you send in any questions, make them brief. My first question will be for Ravina. I'm going to give you two together just so we can answer them a bit quicker. So firstly, from Cheryl French at Cambridgeshire County Council, does it cost to report to CDP? And second question from Tom Tolput from Kirklees Council, does signing up to the UK100 Net Zero Local Leadership Pledge and the city's Race to Zero contribute to the CDP scoring?
Thanks, Talia. Hi, Cheryl. So no, it's completely free to report to CDP. There is no cost whatsoever. There won't be secret costs later. I promise it is completely free. And then Tom, to your question, so no, unfortunately, signing up to Race to Zero, UK100, it doesn't contribute to your score. We still do the scoring through kind of the mechanisms I mentioned earlier, which is through kind of transparency and completeness, and also kind of your responses in terms of climate action plans, adaptation plans, those kind of real actions that we're looking for. But of course, as Laura and Talia have mentioned, there are kind of a huge other host of benefits that come with signing up to these campaigns that I really encourage.
Great, thanks so much, Ravina. Two quick questions that I'm going to answer. One from Louise Costa at the London Borough of Camden. How do we report for the UK100 pledge? And the second one is about if you already report to, for example, the Scottish Government or BEIS, does this count as reporting towards UK100? So firstly, UK100, we are not a technical reporting body. We're not a scientific body. I cannot stress that enough. We convene local leaders, we convene the political. We're very much about advocacy, knowledge sharing, etc. And so you don't actually need to report anything to us. We just need to know that you are reporting to any body, CDP or otherwise, of your choice. And in terms of, if you're already reporting to the Scottish Government or BEIS, so we're currently scoping out reporting requirements for 2022. So if you're already reporting to BEIS or the Scottish Government, this would be absolutely approved for at least the first year. And we're currently just looking into the details for subsequent years. So the next question is from Polly Billington, who is the Chief Executive at UK100. And this one is for Rosalind, Tim and Paul. So if you just want to go in turn. So how do your elected members, whether you're cabinet members or leaders, use the CDP reporting data? Does it help them tell the story of climate action and or accelerate their action? So Tim, if I come to you first.
Sure, and good question. I think as we do more and more submissions year on year, it will start to show how we're tracking, and that will be quite helpful to show if we're on the right route or not. I think at the moment it's really helpful for us at officer level to really drill into the detail of where we are and where we need to go. But I think over years, as we start to track that, I think one of the things we really need to do is stop relying purely on national data that we then derive down to a local authority level. We need to start feeding in local metrics and local data into that equation so that it becomes something that's monitored in real time, and that we can keep tabs on how our projects are influencing outcomes. But I'll leave it there.
Thanks, Tim. Rosalind, if I come to you, how do your elected members use CDP data?
I think at the moment it's a bit difficult to answer a question about elected members in Durham, because from the local election results we've had a bit of a shake-up and we don't know exactly what that's going to look like in the future. But in the past, we had a climate change champion who kept very in touch with all the networking that we did and reporting that we did, and he would be a face to the community of the actions that we're taking, and he helped us with that sort of publicity side of it and awareness side of it. So that was very useful. But as I say, I can't speak for the future on that one, I'm afraid.
I don't think you're the only one, Rosalind, don't worry. And coming to you, Paul, how do your elected members use this data?
Yeah, feel your pain, Rosalind. It's exactly the same situation in Plymouth. But I think there's two elements to this. From a political perspective, you can take the report that comes back, you can take the data, and you can shout about it on the platform if you want to, about how successful an initiative or whatever has been. The other side to it is, if there's challenge back to that, what you have is an independent reviewing body who applies consistent methodology across a global cohort of cities, and you can't argue against that. You can't. There's not a lot you can do that says, well, that's unfair, that's not just. It's a level playing field, and so if politically your elected members need to use that to drive further action, they can do that as well. So you can use it to shout about success. You can also use it to drive further action. So from a political perspective, then they're the two key points that we get useful.
Great, thanks, Paul. I think you can't argue against the science. I think that's quite a sound argument that anyone can use. Ravina, one for you next. So when a local authority reports to CDP, is this purely on the operations under the local authority, so from the estate, vehicles, etc., or does it include the wider community's emissions as well?
Thanks, Talia. So what we ask for is kind of area-wide emissions, ideally. So what's within your local authority boundary or city boundary. You can report your local government emissions, but we do encourage area-wide, just because the kind of government operational emissions is just a much smaller kind of proportion compared to area-wide. So we really encourage that sort of area-wide emissions, but we completely understand the challenges that come with certain parts are not within your power or influence, and we let you kind of explain that, and we're really interested in hearing kind of, are there any barriers to getting certain emissions or tackling certain emissions? And yeah, in terms of kind of local businesses, we also have the corporate side of CDP where we encourage businesses to report their climate data.
Thanks so much, Ravina. Laura, next one to you, if you don't mind. So this is about the, dare I say it, the dreaded Scope 3 emissions. So what are your views on defining the boundary on local authority corporate carbon emissions? And, you know, what do we do about Scope 3? Do we include them? Do we not include them?
A nice big question. And I think Ravina potentially answered the first half of that in terms of her answer to the previous question. So we obviously look at citywide emissions on a geographical basis in terms of CDP reporting. And we would obviously encourage, where possible, local authorities to report Scope 3. Super aware that this is kind of what I'd term an emerging area in terms of data collection and particularly target setting. So for example, the target setting methodologies that I mentioned earlier, they're all for Scope 1 and 2 emissions. They don't include Scope 3. And this is something that's on the horizon for the group of partners I mentioned earlier under the Science-Based Targets Network, to start looking for methodologies and potentially developing methodologies that include Scope 3 emissions as well. Because yeah, we're really aware that this is, you know, an area of concern. So I don't have a concrete, here's what you should do, but definitely to flag it's on the horizon.
Great, thanks, Laura. I've got a question next for Paul. So you had that really interesting graph where you had kind of the policy gap, so the current policy trajectory, where you need to be and what's the gap. How did you determine the policy gap? Is the line kind of an approximate curve based on start and end points, or do you have interim targets?
Well, first thing to say is I didn't do it because I'm not that clever. Somebody else that we paid who's much cleverer than me did it. So we commissioned Exeter University to do a study for a baseline, like a baseline study really of the citywide emissions, and they took the approach in terms of that trajectory using Climate Change Commission data, Bayes data, all sorts of different stuff around. Well, look, there's a clear policy gap here where these are all the expected. This is what we know. This is what might happen based on ideas that you know, the Conservatives had and that's in the manifesto, etc. That gets us to this point, and then that was a national level, and then they did some clever spreadsheet work and got it down to a Plymouth level, and then we took what point 2030 was. So it was simply to highlight. I mean, it's powerful in the sense that it just highlights the gap. You know, that's its purpose.
Great, thanks, Paul. We have a question from Claire Marion at City of Edinburgh Council, asking a bit more about the UK100 pledge and offsets. So I'll just answer that one quickly. This is something that came up when we consulted our members about the pledge, because they wanted to make sure that if you set a really ambitious net zero target, say 2025, 2028, 2030, it's not just that you don't do anything in your local area and you pay for reforestation in the Amazon. So our members really wanted to make sure that they were putting in as much effort as possible. And obviously, as political administrations change, you know, the target will stay the same, but how people go about that might change. So we really wanted to have this kind of local offsets to make sure that local authorities put in that effort and do try and think a bit more creatively. How can they offset their emissions in their local authority that benefits the local community? Yes, Paul, you want to come in on?
Can I nip in there quickly? Just because we totally get the point. No, well, what you need to do is get to, you know, a reduced emissions point, but clearly there is going to be some need for offsetting, and so the local piece is really relevant to us. And we're looking at some, you know, so things like, it's not just about you know, planting trees is the obvious one, but it's a really powerful engagement tool, that local offsetting piece, because as you say, if I want to go and offset my household emissions, I can go online and pay 30 quid, and you know, a developing country in Africa gets a cooking stove that runs on methane. Well, that's great. I mean, you know, let's not discredit that, but it doesn't do a lot for the empowerment of the local people. So there's a whole piece of work to do on that, even to the extent where you have your local key organizations like a hospital, for example. You say to them, right, you're going to need to offset this amount over the next 10 years. How about we put that into building net zero housing? You know, that's the kind of thinking that we need to do, I think. So I just wanted to flag that local offsetting is really key.
Great, thanks so much, Paul. Great to have a local perspective on that, and not just from us as UK100. So this next one, it would be great to have an opinion from each of our local authority members. So how much time did it take you to complete the reporting to CDP? Because I've heard different things myself. It would be great to know from Paul, Rosalind and Tim how long it took you. So Tim, do you want to go first?
tough question again. It depends how active. So we went out we cast our net quite wide and went out to all of the public sector organisations and city businesses. If they're all quite responsive and they get back to you quickly and they give you the data in a relatively concise fashion, then it's not that hard to put it all together and present it. And I'd probably say it take you best part of a couple of weeks to really in earnest pull together the whole submission. But if you get it back in all sorts of dribs and drabs and it's not in very good shape and you have to go and interrogate the data and clean it up and all the rest of it, it could take quite a bit longer. But we were very lucky that the people we engaged with were really good and did a lot of that for us.
Great, thanks, Tim. Rosalind, it would be good to know how long it took you.
Yeah, I think last year we started in about April or May, and I think I'd recommend starting early because, much as Tim said, you've got to ask for the information and then you wait for it to come in. I would say that very little of what I submitted had to be written specially for it. So there are a couple of answers where you have to say, write a description of your local area, but we already had one of those for another report. So there was very little actually writing things. It's all just gathering. So you have to send out your requests now. And you should have them back in time to gather it all in June and July, I would expect.
Great, thanks, Rosalind. Paul, your opinion as well would be much appreciated.
Yeah, so echo both those thoughts. I mean, hands up the first time, it was literally probably a day because it was me running around the office asking people late July, what do we know about this? And can I input it into this, please? Clearly, that's not a productive way of doing this. It doesn't lead to the results that you want. So this year is going to be very different because we've got a bit more structure in place around the climate emergency actually, so people are aware of it, which is beneficial. So yeah, I'd go along the lines of what Rosalind said. Actually, get your requests out now, or look at it now, find out where your data gaps are, where your knowledge gaps are, and get them out now. And then, as Tim said, depending on the quality of the stuff that comes back, will determine how long. But don't underestimate. You get out what you put in basically, and don't underestimate the time it takes.
Thanks, Paul. I really liked what Ravina said earlier in her presentation about there's no minimum requirement of how much you have to put in, which I think makes it really accessible to all local authorities, and especially the first time. I mean, no one's perfect first time, so at least if you give it a go, I think that's a good starting point. Next question from Ravina, if you don't mind, I'll put two together. So is it the most recent reporting year? Is that the year you must report against? And then the second question from Donna Stimson at Windsor and Maidenhead Council, which I haven't heard of this before, so if you could shed some light, I'd really appreciate it. So will you support the CBN expert for reporting baseline targets and establishing their dashboard for 150 buildings?
Yeah, so in terms of how recent your data needs to be, all we ask for is just the most recent data you have. It really isn't that prescriptive. It's not about having 2021 data or even 2020. We really understand that some of this data, a lot of it can come from BAYS, things like that, and you're reliant on when their data is updated. So we completely understand that. So it's just the most recent data you have is perfect. And then in terms of the CBN expert, I'm also not too familiar, but I believe this will lie in our corporate business side of CDP. So what we do encourage is businesses. I believe CBN expert is signed up to the Race to Zero, which is fantastic. But yeah, so if you would like, I can connect you with the corporate side of CDP and the corporate reporting that they do and they encourage. And similarly, you will have a dashboard and all the kind of same services.
Thanks, Ravina. So we've got less than 5 minutes left, so I'm just going to wrap up with the last final question. So I know Paul and Tim, you both have 2030 targets at the council, which are incredibly ambitious and very soon. So what was your experience in making these shorter term targets? Were there many challenges? What were kind of the advantage of setting these earlier targets, and especially about making the plan for these targets? Would be great to hear. So Tim, you first.
Yeah, the 2030 target is hugely ambitious, and we're fully aware of that, and it needs an awful lot of investment. And I'd probably say more than just investment, we need to find entirely new commercial models of changing the way we do business as usual into a model that is low carbon but doesn't require lots of grant money or complete gap funding. So So it has meant that we've had to engage in an awful lot of feasibility work. So we've been working with BEIS through the City Decarbonisation Delivery Programme, looking at how we do wholesale decarbonisation of our social housing stock, of our public sector buildings, of the hospitals, of the universities, all sorts of big studies looking at how we really drive down emissions. But it's meant that we've had to pull together our waste team with our transport team, with our facilities management and energy teams and our housing teams, and all of them have had to have dedicated boards that are really driving towards low carbon or big carbon reductions across their responsibility areas. So the 2030 target does one thing particularly well, I think, and that's it drives action really, really quickly. So I think that if nothing else, it will get us a long way down that line and get us moving forward quickly.
Great, thanks, Tim. Paul, would be great to hear from you as well on the 2030 targets and plans to get there.
So yeah, hands up. The 2030 target was born out of pressure based on science, to be fair, but no study as to how we may get there prior to the target setting. And I'm pretty sure that's fairly commonplace. I mean, there's arguments for and against that, but it's a bold statement, which is really useful. And also, when it was at the full council, the council chamber was full. I've never seen it full of public attending. So it did the trick in terms of raising awareness, gaining interest, engaging, getting it on the political map and agenda. In terms of how we get there, but that is the issue. We have a 2030 target, we have yearly action plans, and we have a line that goes from the top where we are now down to the bottom of 2030. We don't really know at the minute. I mean, Rosalind, really interested to pick up with you how you set yourself some carbon budgets, which is great, and you kind of apportion that thematically almost through buildings and transport. That's probably the next step for us. But we're not there yet. So we have a hugely ambitious target. We have credible action plans that are doing mitigating actions to deliver reductions in carbon emissions, etc. But to be totally honest, they're not totally joined up. We don't know how that is going to equate to that yet. That's something that we need to work on.
Great, thanks, Paul. I'm conscious of time, but I've just got one last question, which I think is a really important one. So obviously, if you don't get the A rating of CDP, is there some kind of worry or are councillors, elected members feeling anxious if you do go ahead and report and you don't get the top, the top score? And is it kind of a worry, or have you experienced that your elected members have maybe not wanted to report because of that reason? Rosalind, it would be great to hear from you, and then I'll quickly go to Paul and then Tim.
No, I think they're on board with what we do, whether it's reporting or any other networking, because it's, as I say, useful knowledge sharing and useful skill finding from information from all over the world. So it seems if I want to find out information from somebody else, I ought to be sharing my own as well.
Great, thanks, Rosalind. Paul?
Yeah, it's all in the framing of it, isn't it? I appreciate Tim and Rosalind are sitting on some good grades there, so it might make their job slightly easier in the sense of approaching their members. But it's all about the framing of it. This whole agenda has to be an open and honest conversation, and politicizing it is, I get why it happens, but it's probably not the best route for it, because what we want is we just want a really transparent view as to, well, okay, so Plymouth got a D as an example. Well, why is that? It's because we need to do this, this, and this. Great. Well, that's really productive. And that's the message that we need to get across in terms of this. It's going to drive action for the greater good. Thanks,
Paul. Tim, final word from you on that?
Oh, if we don't get an A rating this year, the earth will open up and swallow us. No, in all honesty, exactly as my colleagues from Plymouth and Durham have said, this is not about politics in that sense. It's about making sure that we disclose and that we are transparent with what we're doing, and we're held to account against international standards. And really, there's a lot of drive before COP26 to do more, really move the agenda forward and maintain that momentum beyond COP. So I think, all of this feeds into that agenda, and that's about concrete action, not about politics and not about a score at the end of the day.
Thanks so much, Tim. And we're going to close the webinar here. I'd like to thank all of our panelists for speaking. Ravina, Laura, Rosalind, Paul, Tim, thank you so much for sharing your experience. I think it's been incredibly helpful and I've certainly learned a lot as well. As I mentioned at the start, if you're interested in signing up to UK100, do get in touch with me at membership@uk100.org. I know Ravina has also put her email in the chat. So please do get in touch if you're interested in CDP as well. Thank you so much for attending and enjoy the rest of your day. Bye.